Λονδίνο, Ιούλιο.
London, July 2008, fourth Olympic Games marathon. The older, maybe you've heard, Dorando Pietri, the Italian marathon runner who was able to proceed in the course in the last kilometers. But entering exhausted on the stadium, he collapsed 70 meters before the line. He collapsed 4 times before he reached first the end. He didn't get the gold medal. The American John Hayes was awarded because although he was second, he objected and finally he became first. But Pietri wrote history because even when the body abandoned him, the soul stood up and it kept him going. Even without this example, it is certain to all that the athletic psychology is crucial during training, but also during the games. Talking about psychology, we mean how to manage emotions, how to deal with unpleasant circumstances, finding incentive whenever, being able to focus on your objective, and the decision-making possibility under pressing circumstances. Everybody knows, especially athletes, that daily trainings will close or be postponed by saying, I'm not good, I'm not feeling well. And sometimes athletes who win will say it was a matter of psychology. Katerina Stefanidi, golden Olympian and worldwide champion or world champion of pole jump, will talk to us about the crucial role of psychology in an athlete. She is sponsored by Heroes GR and Stihima.
Καλησπέρα σας.
Good evening, though I have to say I'm from Ohio, USA, and it's noon. I'm Katerina Stefanidi. I'm Olympic champion over 2008, but I have studied something with regard to what we're going to talk today, biology, neuropsychology, and then I started a cognitive psychology PhD, which I stopped after my master at the pre-Olympic a year, because I thought that for 1 year maybe I could take a break from studying, and I was right to do that. And then in 2016 I did well, and maybe at the end of my athletic career I'll go back to my PhD. Hello. Hi, my name is Yiannis Zarotis. I'm a psychologist. I'm specialized in athletes. I cooperate with teams and athletes, either for initiation in sports or high performance. Based on today's talk and about psychology for athletes. It's my joy to converse with this elite athlete who will help us and help the audience in order to understand athletic psychology. We will try and see the perspective of athletes and their psychology, how it can provide some attributes to athletes from the beginning of their careers. And we'll also try to see how in the daily life, during training, even during the games, psychology is crucial to performance. Based on the science of athletic psychology, based on the principles of psychology, a big part of athletes and their attributes has to do with psychology in general. So apparently many things with regard to the evolution of the athlete from the very start happen due to, a certain evolution of things. In order to become a high-performing athlete, it means that from the very beginning of these athletic activities, images were positive and they helped him reach this high level. Is this true for you too? I believe that there is a big interaction, between nature and environment when growing up. Both my parents were athletes. They were members of the track, the national team, and I started with that, with athletics in the beginning. My parents in the beginning tried to push me into having games, and I started running around Athens. There were some mini games at that time, and I was part of such games from a very young age. And I remember even at the beach, we would always try to do some sprint or do track. All that has played an important role for me into coping well under pressure, especially when it comes to sports. I think that this shows even in the literature of the sports psychology. It's crucial into the choice of a sport to see what parents like. Sometimes there is a parent who might be more dominant or who will give incentive for a sport, or there might be another type of parent who will try progressively to push or to get most of the child, thinking that the more you push, the more performant the athlete may be. We see this very often. We always try to find some kind of balance. All that affects children very much. I see that you've had the positive side of the parent being supportive. I think that I've had to deal with both sides. I think sometimes I felt the pressure, and I was a special case because I was successful with world records very young. When I was 15, I had two records. World records. So at 15, 16 years of age, everybody was pushing me, the federation, the state. They had lots of ambitions for me, and that affected me a great deal at the time. I think that from 2005 to 2011, I didn't have any personal record. But through that, I got some other opportunities. I came to the USA. I was part of a university team. I studied, and I found again my love for sports before that pressure starts. So I cannot say that all that is positive, but let's say that I dealt with it properly and I was lucky, because it's also a question of luck. I had the opportunity to come here, and from the moment that I came here, things went well. They could have not gone well, or maybe I could have stopped sports and stayed in Greece. What I mean to say is that due to the good performances I've had at a young age, maybe the pressure was too much. And this was negative at some point in time for me, but maybe it's one of the reasons why I can manage such pressure even better. Maybe I would have never known how to manage pressure if these things hadn't happened early on. Yes, it's the positive side of things. 7 out of 10 children at the age of 12 or 13 abandon sports. And one of the main reasons why is that they always have the stress to satisfy what others expect of me. And if a child is recognized as a talent from a young age, then this child tries to prove him or herself as a talent and loses orientation, loses direction instead of having fun, instead of getting improved, focuses on being the most effective and on winning. And then emotionally, the child is very charged with all this pressure and the ambition of all the others around the child. Then, of course, we have the positive result. And given the psychology, some people, when evolving, when developing, whatever they experience, what people should keep is the way to use, to manage experiences. If they use experiences to their benefit, then that will be the inheritance of their past. Parents are quite important in that, even in Greece. They become quite suffocating. I think in your activity and in other athletes, even in younger ages, parents seem more convincing. It's interesting for me to see the differences here in the children of junior high, or even my players, co-athletes. Sometimes, we're rivals, but we compete so often and we're friends. And I want to see the different dynamics in the family. My biggest rival, who got the silver medal in Rio, comes from a very different background. Her parents were the biggest fan, the biggest supporters. She never felt the pressure. They never told her, you're a talent in the pole jump, you should do that. And I think that, and I've said it in many interviews, I think that we're missing that, this support, this thing that we should tell children what they do right and not what they do wrong. I understand that when you say you're doing this wrong, you're saying so that they do it right. But you never know how this will affect the life of the children for the rest of their lives in the next decades. I see this happening from my experience in Europe and the USA. Yes, what you say is very valid. For children of 12, 13, we should be more awarding, more rewarding, more, we should be telling them that we're satisfied more. It's remarkable to see that we have athletes that had to deal with a lot of pressure when young. Then they cannot do some more research. We cannot research them because they're not there anymore. They're out of the picture of the sports. Though they have a lot of potential, sometimes they disappear because of that. They could not, or they did not want to manage all this pressure. it's interesting what you are saying, that we should see in high-performing athletes what is different or what is common in these elite athletes. I think that there are some attributes, however, that seem to be common in elite athletes without being same personalities. There are some elements that are common. I kept some notes before our conversation, and I see the word self-confidence being all over, and I think that there's no better way to say of what is in common between all elite athletes of all sports. I'd say achieved people, accomplished people in every sector. I think it's self-confidence, and I don't think that. I'm not, I don't mean something wrong. It's not that I feel I'm better from the other. It's that I feel confident about myself. Sure, self-confidence accompanies us in our lives for the rest of our lives. So we believe that we're able to achieve many things. It's not arrogance that I will win anyway, I can do it anyway, or no matter what. And in sports, we have the favorites, and some people favorites are the ones that are obliged to satisfy or to meet expectations. But favorites are the ones who have maybe more possibilities going for them, that may provide some self-confidence, but it should not be a given thing that everything is for me, so I will win. And then self-confidence, the feeling we have about ourselves as athletes, is quite essential. Suffices that this self-confidence is based on some, stable, solid foundations. Because I see some athletes, I need or I must have self-confidence, but I'm lacking training hours, etc. Self-confidence, in your case, and I think you should say it in the athletes, in order to have self-confidence, you need to have, worked a lot of hours in order to acquire, to build this self-confidence. I totally agree. And it's what we call true or false self-confidence. And I see many girls, co-athletes, to have this fake self-confidence. I must believe in myself. I must believe that I'm the best. But this is not really self-confidence. Self-confidence, the real one, is built progressively through the years, experience, training, the way trainer and the coach is talking to you, the way your co-athletes talk to you. And for us, what is very important, and we talk a lot about it, if we look back at 2 to 5 years, we can see the different steps we've made. And every year, my confidence builds up till I finally come to the perfect fitness. And then I can perform well. So I see this fake self-confidence. Maybe they wanted to appear in some games, and sometimes this can be okay for them, and they can have a good performance. But for some people, for those who will stay active and always be performing, I think that self-confidence must be really based on solid foundations, especially when it comes to pole jump, where psychology is really very important. Yes, and I agree with what you say, that self-confidence, being solid, is very important. Whereas the other thing is people who have a positive image of themselves. And if they want to build self-confidence, the thing is which were going to be the foundations to do so. in some young athletes or even older athletes, we lose direction of what confidence I can produce and how we can cultivate it as a notion. There is no pill for self-confidence, or you cooperate with some specialist and you acquire self-confidence. People must build, maybe with the advice of a professional, but they must build, they must find the way to build self-confidence. Yes, and the path is different for each athlete. Maybe I build my self-confidence after many hours of training. Others may believe that putting the bar higher every time makes them be more confident. Others may do some, I don't know, consultation with a psychologist in order to build self-confidence. How you build it is very important. And sometimes we have younger children in social media and they call me, what do you do before the games? What if you lose? What if you are sad? How do you deal with that? I think that when you build self-confidence, then even if you have a bad performance, it should not get to you that much, because maybe next time um, you have to compete at an even higher performance level. So I think the approach is not the same for everyone. Yes, and as you say, whether you fail or you win, it's important to know that self-confidence is important no matter what. We try to manage a certain situation because it's another thing, I was not good, or I'm not well, or I did not do well, or that I'm not well. These are very different things. One has to do with a way of thinking. It comes from within us. But if I've worked very much, I cannot be overwhelmed because I failed in one game. There are lots of years of good training beforehand, and I've had many good performances before. So even if I fail once, I will not doubt myself. And I think that this characterizes self-confident athletes. I don't think it's arrogant. It just comes from inside them. Yes, it's one of the most important parts for elite athletes. There are many talents around the world. Some people uh, are distinguished because of this part. I've been in various parts of the world for conferences. I was in France once and I saw, daily people, 15 or 17 year of age, people in stadiums, and some people, due to their body structure, I think that could be very sportive um, because of their body structure. And you see that some people have the body structure to do that, but there's more. There's more to being a high-performance athlete. It's not just the body, it's also the psychology, but of course also lots of hours of training. And if some people want to or don't want to do it, yes. Plus, what you said earlier is that many people believe that they'll go to a psychologist and suddenly they'll have self-confidence and it will be magical. And then and the realization and the training and everything, all the pointers of athletic psychology show that we need a lot of work. I may jump, and the first thing I'll say is where I was wrong, and I've worked on that a lot. Now I try to see what went right. And I had to work with that every single time. I think that people don't realize that. They believe that people are born with self-confidence, or that there is some shaman who will give them confidence. The more you work with your body, the more you must work with your soul as well, and your mind. Yes, and I see how many hours of training each one of you is putting there. And the role of the coach is very important, especially in the early years of the young athlete. We see athletes in young ages, and they get to have a profile of athlete, a coach that will see young athletes 5 to 6 years of age. They give them an idea of sports, of what will follow, and how much potential the coach sees in the younger athletes. Yes, I think we see this a great deal. We see a lot of young children being coached here, but in Greece as well. And there's this concept. It's some kind of prophecy. Somebody said you're a great talent, although you're no different from the person next to you. Making you believe that you're the best will make you better than the other one. This happens a lot in sports. Yes, we call it yes, a self-accomplished prophecy, but there is also a negative side. Same thing, is valid for the non-talented. It's the Pygmalion phenomenon in a school class. Facing a child which is a weak student, unconsciously kind of tell the child that he or she cannot make it. So we don't say bravo a lot. We believe that this child won't make it, won't go very far. This is negative, and children may not evolve because without knowing, they are confirming a prophecy which was to their detriment. We care a lot about that when it comes to younger children and coaches, because coaches in 6 or 7 years of age have to give the greater picture to the athletes about the future, though you can't predict if a child of 6 years of age will become a talented, high-performing athlete. Yes, but this self-image that is given to you by a coach can actually affect you in the future, and for many years in any sector it gives you this self-image of being a failure or being successful. And a coach has a crucial role when athletes are very young. They're there and they're doing many things that will affect the children in their future, whatever they decide to do. Yes, they should be able to give a positive feeling to the children. Based on the results lately, we have a better image of sports as a notion, as a concept. We had the case of an athlete who went to a certain sport for the experience, and he said, I'm not going there again because they shout a lot. So he thought that he didn't want coaches to shout. He did not want to see another coach. He just rejected the sport. So yes, coaches can actually affect many people, um, as many as maybe one lay person cannot begin to think to affect in their lives. It's a responsible position for children and for their development. We always uh, try to see in our coach a high-performing athlete, and I think that athletes pick up on these attributes in order to reach a higher level. My personal experience is such in my career. There are some things that are positive and that I have from my very first coach, but some others were negative, but I believed in them so much, and I had to work on that a lot in order to stop believing them. But from 10 to 18 years of age, I had to work a lot of that. But the first coach, you always carry the first coach with you. Yes, you also spend a lot of time with coaches. Coaches share your concerns, your emotions. Coaches try to manage you. You have to manage yourselves. It's quite weird as a condition. I do respect coaches because, all the lights and publicity go to the athletes only. And of course, they are very worth, but coaches are very important because they were able to manage and get from the athlete 100%, managing a living being. I believe that all this is a result of a great work training with the athletes, with everyone. My coach now is my husband. We're together for the last 6 years now, and I see that after a hard training, especially in us that we jump all the time, he comes back and he's also very tired because after every jump he has to think about what he will say, how he will say it, without ruining my self-confidence. And I see him that he's really very tired, mentally tired after some trainings. Plus, that we always look for someone who will support the athlete, and we always believe that coaches will support themselves and that they have no need, but their role is really very important and multifaceted. They have to look on many things at the same time. The more they can combine, the better their job. And of course, your part is also very important. In your case, he has to combine the role of the husband and the role of the coach. It's difficult. Yes, but this has been quite positive in our case. He knows me more than any other coach, even a coach I grew up with. And he can read me better. And for us in the pole jump, this is important because during a game I must make a lot of decisions about if we change the pole, if we take a bigger, a shorter, the bar going backwards, where to put the bar, maybe change the speed. I think that on the game, what he does is he asks me, what do you think should be done, so that I see where I stand psychologically, and then he makes an informed decision. I think that the fact that he can read me better for us, it's part of our success. Yes, and apparently coaches and athletes have a common objective, and maybe what makes things different in the relation is the cooperation. We cooperate for the same objective. I listen to what you say. We try to do the best. Well, actually, you described the perfect relation. He asks the athlete, and they decide together. This seems cooperation. And I think that cooperation accompanies many high-performing athletes. It's a personality attribute, especially during the training and the acceptability. If I accept what my coach will say, it's very important. It helps people reaching a very high level. Being acceptive also means that they are positive and that they trust the people they work with. I try to see other um, pairs, coaches and athletes, and I think that this has to do with the image of coaches. We care to have coaches that accept feedback from athletes. They are the ones who have better results. Yes, and I think they can, after that, claim to have a higher level, a higher performance. Because you need to have all that in order to claim an Olympic medal, for example. You can't have behind you so many years of high performing career without having somebody who is really helping next to you. And over the years, the role of the coach becomes even more important. As athletes too, in the last 2 years, circumstances have been quite difficult, more difficult compared to the past. So you also need to try and manage difficult situations. Yes, and I think that now we will know who does what and for which reasons. I think people who go, who train, who care will be better. I'm very anxious, of course, to see how I will be able to prepare with a lot less games for us, the elite who compete in full stadiums. I think this has affected us a lot. We know, of course, that stadiums may be empty. We must weigh the way that we are trained, the intensity of the training. We have worked a lot over that in the last year. I think it's quite, it's forced. It forced itself on us. I know that they will try and have a healthy population and indigenous population, but I don't know. They are saying that they might have 40% um, capacity in the stadiums, open to people. It's not too bad. But then they want to think open stadiums versus closed stadiums. So should they have the same capacity, occupied capacity? It depends. It depends. I don't know. I really don't know. Well, I think that they talk a lot. Whatever they do, they'll do it correctly. I think that athletes should feel safe. people must plan things, and I think that the planning is important to high-performing elite athletes. I think that the organizational part is going to help you a lot. It's difficult, it's particular, and seeing other athletes in Greece as well who train, there's all this uncertainty. When we talked about incentives earlier, this uncertainty is a little bit of an incentive as well. Last year, it was an incentive. This year, we didn't have a lot of games going on, but I made myself believe that it's going to be a normal year. Otherwise, there's no incentive. There's no interest for the athlete, and from one day to another, training can actually worsen by 50%. This shows how important the psychology is and the incentive for what you wanted to do. Because when it comes to your body, nothing changes from one day to another, but in terms of psychology, many things change. Yes, and all that affects athletes. People or children who compete. It's very important because the game gives you the energy to go on. So this is what is lacking lately, this preparation. I see children who are at a very good level worldwide, but they're now thinking about going on, if they will go on, what will come next. We have been thinking about how things have changed. A child that started off sixth grade, end of the primary school, at the end of this pandemic will be at the end of the junior high. A lot of time will have gone by. And what you say is important, that our body hasn't changed, but the environment have changed. And if I let it affect me, it will affect me. Yes, we also see the other way around. The closer we are in games, in events, due to the stress, to the pressure, the intensity of the training changes. Psychology, intensity, they change the result of the game. So having a game or even the idea of a game changes our daily life a great deal. And you talking about stress, you know how important it is for athletes who can hear us today and coaches, that it's important. And it's very normal for athletes to have stress, to have such a stressful emotions, because things change. And feelings change because of the daily life, and sometimes we're afraid of our stress. What if I'm stressed? What will happen if? And listening to you as an elite athlete, I come to realize that if you're there and you're still talking about stress, then yes, it's normal, but can you manage it? Can you deal with it? Because this is a difficult point. I can experience an emotion, but can I manage this emotion? And talking about elite athletes who do not smile, who are emotionless, is it like that? I think you learn to focus, you learn to manage your feelings. It's normal, but it's also necessary. Looking at it scientifically, we have this curve of psychology with performance and the stress. The more stressed you are, the more performant you are. You need to see which part of the curve you are, but this now has been reversed with me. If I'm not stressed before the game, I'm stressed because I don't have enough stress. This is negative, and I was thinking about it earlier too. Lately, maybe also because of the level I mean, but it's also in fashion that athletes should not have feelings. But for me, it's totally the contrary. Athletes do better when they are overwhelmed with emotions, but they have to manage them well. So I try to deal with them and well, okay, maybe for each and everyone, things can be different, and maybe some athletes may not want to deal with emotions, but I think um, you can't just not have any feelings. You just have to learn to manage them. You're so right. Sports is related to two important feelings. One is the energy and focus, and of course, energy, the energy that we get from feelings themselves, this pleasant feeling or this stressful feeling of the participation in a competition. Psychophysiologically, this releases energy in the body, and that will allow us to have, more potential. So I think you put it really very well. I try to put these emotions into the right track, the right direction. It's what we want for athletes. People who have a level of certain energy and they wanted to channel this energy into the direction that they want. Yes, and I also believe that stress, enthusiasm, the way our body recognizes the feelings in our stomach, the butterflies and all that, it's good. And I think we know the difference between enthusiasm or impatience of a game versus stress, bad stress. And I think that we read the negative feelings this way. When you say I'm stressed, you actually may have a positive feeling because it's not really stress, it's enthusiasm. And if we think of it as something normal, even necessary, then we're better off in dealing with it. Talking about the butterfly in your stomach, maybe sometimes the objective is not to send them away, but to make them fly to the right direction. I think it's the culminating point of what we're talking about, managing a feeling and making it work in my benefit. I believe that managing feelings is the most important procedure in psychology. There's something inner, biological. After a certain stress, each brain will produce different neurotransmitters. So I don't believe you can say which neurotransmitter will have to transmit and who will not. You can't manage it this way. This is our body, and under such conditions, we have to record X neurotransmitters, and we need to be able to deal with them. This is how we should deal with our anxiety. Yes, this is also my viewpoint, especially about some psychological factors that are uncertain. As it was said in the introduction, if something goes wrong, sometimes we say it's a problem of psychology, whether you have, you can have stress, and whether that is for you or against you. In any way, you have it and you have to deal with it. For athletes, it seems to be important to know what they have to manage. Sometimes it's a question of stress, anxiety, incentive, and sometimes we have a competition, an event ending, and then they say our psychology is not good. And they said, okay, so tomorrow morning during training, what are we going to work? Because it's something very general, it doesn't have any objective. So what are we trying to work with anyway? I think it's quite important. This is what you're doing here with your presence. You are telling athletes and coaches understand that the feelings, emotions in the daily life of an athlete are his or her psychology. Athletes manage their feelings, but it needs a lot of work. It needs a lot of work. It needs a lot of work to understand the feelings, realize what type of work this takes, what they want to hear during the games. Some may want to hear heavy metal, some others classical music, and even that may be something easy, but I don't think that all athletes need to understand what they need to manage before the games. It takes a lot of work for both the coach and the athlete to realize what has to be done, what has to be managed, how it should be managed. So they are telling us that we should be finishing. I don't know if you would like to answer to some questions. I don't see any in the chat. What makes you feel good some minutes before the game, before the event? I think it's a self-confidence. I'd say before the event, what I want to do is to shut off my brain, switch off my brain. My body knows what to do during the training. And before the game, I must free my body to do what it knows. Because sometimes the mind is an impediment to what our body can do. There is nothing concrete that I wanted to say. It's something that we're working during the year, and it's open to improvement even after the game. There is one question here again. Can we combine school with sports? Can the environment and psychology help us combine school and sports? First of all, many people have done it, and I don't think it's impossible. For me, it was easier to do it here compared to Greece. I lived here, worked here, studied here in a campus, and in 15 minutes by bicycle, I could be everywhere. This helped me not to have huge distances. I don't think that something particular helped us into becoming athletes, but everything was around it. There was a better program. It was easier to combine.
Το γυμνάσιο δεν θεωρώ ότι θα πρέπει να...
Not so many hours of training or studying. You can combine them at all levels. However, it was easier here because one was next to the other. Well, we need to conclude. Let me add that everything can be combined. However, time management on a daily basis is something critical so that you fulfill both tasks. So, thank you. Thank you very much. I would like to thank the participants, the organization, some additional infos. I hope they were passed over. And Mrs. Stefanidi, I wish you good luck to Tokyo and every success. Good evening.